CNN's Alison Camerata hosted a panel of 2020 voters, and I found what the participants said absolutely fascinating and actually kind of encouraging. So to give you the setup here, these are all former Hillary Clinton voters. They all voted for Hillary Clinton in the general election. Some of them supported Bernie over Hillary. But what they say now about 2020, it actually was surprising to me because I would have expected CNN to field a panel of people who would say things that were kind to the establishment, and that's not actually what we got here. So the question is posed to them whether or not they feel as if a pragmatist or a centrist is needed to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. Now, the amount of people that raise their hands is just 2 out of a panel of 6 people. Yeah, 6 people, had to check. And I was actually really surprised by this because I would have expected the number to be higher, but it's clear here that people are just hungry for change. So take a look.
How many people believe that the winning formula would be for a Democrat to be pragmatic and more centrist? Show of hands. 2 of you feel that way. How many of you feel that the time is right for a progressive and that's what would win? Carol?
We're ready for progressive candidates. They've won all over the country. And I think we need bold, strong leadership, and you'll find that in the progressives.
I think that we had the standard bearer for the kind of pragmatic centrist candidate in Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Donald Trump is now the president. He is not your average political candidate. So we really need to try to think outside the box because, you know, it seems like the dude is made of rubber. Like anything you throw at him just bounces off. I mean, there's nothing that sticks.
How many of you would like to see Joe Biden get in? Show of hands. What's happening, Russell?
His time is done.
I'll be honest. I used to think because obviously he was riding like kind of the Obama wave, and I thought he was the person that would unite the party. But to be honest, Senator Biden really comes from the kind of the good old boy politics of the past.
I don't think Joe Biden represents that new thing that we need. We need a new economy, we need a new politics, and we need someone different.
This was really interesting to me because what they were saying essentially was that they weren't committed to supporting any one candidate, but they were very open to the idea of supporting a progressive. And that's what we want to hear. So this is all great, and what one person said really was something I didn't expect an average voter to say. Quote, "We had a centrist standard bearer and Trump is now president." And that is precisely what CNN viewers need to hear. Because for all this talk for individuals like Howard Schultz who say, oh, well, we just can't have someone who's on the far left go up against Donald Trump, otherwise we're going to have another situation like George McGovern where they get steamrolled. This is 2019. And what was true before is no longer true. And for those of you still vying for someone like Amy Klobuchar or Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden to win the nomination, you're setting us all up for disaster, and you are paving the way for another Donald Trump victory. Because we had Hillary Clinton, a centrist, in fact, the quintessential centrist, take on Donald Trump, and she lost. 100 million people didn't vote, and a lot of the Democratic Party just chose to stay home. So if you want to repeat that, then I don't think you're serious about defeating Donald Trump. Now you can say, you know what, actually my political ideology and my centrism is more important than defeating Donald Trump, and I'm firmly committed to that, and that's fine. I'd respect you for being truthful about that. However, you can't simultaneously say you want a centrist and to defeat Donald Trump, because these things are incompatible. They're mutually exclusive. You can either want to defeat Donald Trump and make that your priority, or you can want a centrist to win the Democratic Party nomination. But you have to acknowledge that if a centrist wins, you're hurting all of our chances, and ultimately, I think what would really be a disaster here, if we have a centrist win the nomination, is not that Donald Trump will be reelected for another 4 years, because I think that even if it would be misery, we could all survive another 4 years of Donald Trump. begrudgingly so. But the real issue is the Supreme Court. If we lose the Supreme Court and lose another seat, then we are fucked for an entire generation. Can't let that happen, and I think we all have a vested interest in choosing someone who can beat Donald Trump. It's not a pragmatist, it's a progressive. Another person said, I don't think Biden represents the new thing that we need. We need a new economy, we need a new politics, and we need someone different. And I think that really speaks to what's happening right now. You had another person say, interestingly enough, I initially kind of was open to Biden because of nostalgia. I'm paraphrasing. And I think that he's polling really well right now because of nostalgia. People think back to the Obama era and they think, wow, that was a more stable time and there wasn't all of this insanity transpiring on a daily basis. But in actuality, the reason why we got Donald Trump is because things didn't improve for normal Americans under Obama. And I think that once Joe Biden opens his mouth again, people are going to realize that because he just has the tendency to piss people off. Last year, he was talking down to millennials, saying, give me a break when they talk about the problems that they have. He recently called Mike Pence a decent guy who is a rampant homophobe. So, I mean, he just has the tendency to piss people off. And I think that the more he talks, the more we're going to realize that the Obama days, even if that brought stability, it didn't bring about the change that we needed and that we were promised. And as someone who's part of the Obama coalition, who was one of the millennial voters who voted for Obama for the first time, I can tell you, I'm very disappointed in Obama and I have nothing but disdain for someone like Joe Biden, who is not going to get in there and change the status quo. He's just going to keep the seat warm for another 4 to 8 years until we get someone worse than Trump, until we get a President Ted Nugent. Because every time we, have these neoliberal presidents in office, well, people get more desperate, they get more radicalized, and they end up opting for someone even more extreme on the right. So I was really pleased to hear them say pretty much what I'm telling you and what I say all the time on the show. It's not like what I'm saying is unique or, is this insight that's just brilliant. It's just being a normal person, understanding the needs of other normal Americans. They then talked about issues that they care the most about, and what was said here was largely agreeable, which again really surprised me.
What will you be voting on in 2020 if the election were held today? Mary, what's your big issue that you feel you would vote on?
My big issue truly is about climate change. I think because it touches everyone, and it touches jobs, and it touches our future. And we cannot have a conversation about politics without considering what we are doing to the planet.
And I mean, you see people freaking out over the wall and these migrants coming up from Central and South America. I mean, that's going to be like nothing compared to the migration we will see as climate change really starts to affect the sea level rise. I mean, the ice is melting fast.
My big issue is the global world order. I mean, we have a president who has humiliated the United States on the global stage by cozying up to dictators, by falling in love with the leader of North Korea, by having a relationship with Russia that makes him giddy and excited.
I echo all the sentiments on climate change. I also am going to be looking for a candidate that's going to take on sensible gun regulation. That's a big one for me. That's maybe the biggest one for me.
I think overall, like whoever I support, they have to be for Medicare for all. It's hurting so many people. It's something Democrats have worked on since FDR, and we absolutely need to have that. Healthcare just needs to be a human right.
So for the most part, I agree with everything that they said there. Climate change, Medicare for all, gun reform. So it makes more sense to acknowledge that, yes, even though there's this unholy alliance between the left and centrists within the Democratic Party, there is still enough common ground, even among the two panelists who are more pragmatically inclined, if you will, to support policies that I also support. So that was encouraging. However, there was one person who said something that didn't really resonate with me. Quote, my biggest issue is global world order. We have a president who has humiliated us on the global stage. Now, for this one, I mean, I can get why someone would say this if they're more of a traditionalist and they are glued to mainstream media, but at the end of the day, what this individual doesn't realize is that America has already humiliated itself on the international stage. We are a bully. We are an international thug. We've had presidents now for decades wage illegal regime change wars in Iraq. We're doing drone strikes in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. You have Pakistan telling the US government, get out of our country, and they're not listening. So I think that we've done enough to embarrass ourselves, and the way that I can guess that people in other countries view Donald Trump is the perfect representation of American thuggery and stupidity. That's the way I view it. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Donald Trump is unique in embarrassing the country, although I will say this, just because he's so stupid and he has a low IQ, like he's genuinely unintelligent, I think that it's more embarrassing than usual. Is this one of my biggest issues? No. So that was the only thing that kind of struck me as not really understanding why she would come to that conclusion. You know, things that she cites, love of dictators, that line was incredibly hacky. And the reason why I say that that's hacky is because I want presidents to do diplomacy. And when you consider the fact that the United States gives military support to 73% of the world's dictatorships, this is something that you'd only agree with if you just consume mainstream media and you don't seek out alternative independent news sources. Now, I want to show you one last clip that absolutely surprised me. So they were asked what role they believe Hillary Clinton can play in 2020 and if she should play a role altogether at all. And even the pragmatists gave us an answer that just straight up shocked me.
All of you ended up being Hillary voters. So does Hillary have a role in 2020? Should she campaign for?
Stay away.
Why is that?
I love you, Hillary. I love you. But stay away. We're so divided right now that anything that has Hillary on it is automatically going to separate us again.
I just think her time is done. I think it's done. We do need something new.
Do you feel the same way about President Obama? Should he campaign for who?
Yes, he should campaign. He's a great campaigner. He's very beloved, and he also has a tremendous connection to all the people that love him. He has a base still, and that base is very strong. And he has, I think, an authoritative voice against Trump that we're going to need in this campaign.
So remember, the two ladies who raised their hands in the first clip I showed you and said that they want someone who's more pragmatic were actually the first people to speak out and say, no, we don't want Hillary Clinton playing a role. She's too divisive. So in a clip that I didn't show you, this woman had said that she doesn't support Bernie because she thinks he's too divisive. But to be fair to her, she said the same about Hillary Clinton. So she's someone who is genuinely concerned about unity, which, you know, I respect. But I was actually shocked by that because all we're hearing is about what Hillary Clinton can do and what role she can play. And there was an article from The Hill that came out right before I filmed this segment where she talked about playing a role in 2020 specifically with the intent of unifying the party. And my response to that is, if you want to unify the party, then you have to get Hillary Clinton as far away from the party as possible, because all that she's doing is adding to the wedge that exists between the establishment and progressive wings of the party. You have Politico articles where her ex-staffers keep taking shots at Bernie Sanders. One of them is using a Cold War-era McCarthyist smear against Bernie Sanders to suggest that he's being propped up by Russians because those individual donors, well, you know, only half of them were named Vladimir. That's what they're saying. So my response was, if I want to stop the pain that I'm feeling from a wound, I'm going to pour salt on it. That's the same logic here. You don't have Hillary Clinton come to unify the party. And for the people that say the same about Bernie Sanders, well, the reason why he's deemed a divisive figure is because of Hillary Clinton. Because she attacked him while playing the victim and pretending that she was attacked. And even David Brock, who attacked Bernie Sanders, then apologized in a way, saying that he was a little bit harsh. So, I mean, these people they're so arrogant and they have so much hubris. I'm glad that the panel agrees. Now, when it comes to Obama playing a role, I'm actually a little bit torn because, again, I'm from the Obama coalition. I'm one of the millennial voters that helped him get elected. So when I see Obama campaigning, I feel disappointment, and I don't want to hear from him. He's doing his speeches to Wall Street, and I'm sick of Obama. He did nothing to really substantially change the country when we were promised hope and change. He promised us that he would not do politics as usual. So I really don't give a shit about what he has to say. However, is he good for campaigning? I mean, I'm torn because on one hand, you will have progressives feel dissatisfied and disenfranchised because Obama really was a humongous disappointment. But at the same time, he still has a relatively high approval rating. So I'm kind of torn on that front. But by and large, just kind of stepping back and taking this entire panel as a whole, I was pleasantly surprised because when you talk to Democratic Party voters, you expect maybe just one standout who's more progressive oriented, but the entire panel, even if they weren't tried and true Bernie Sanders loyalists and supporters, they did seem a lot more open to progressive ideas, which is what I care about the most, because that does tell me that the base itself is no longer buying into the propaganda being disseminated by the establishment. That pragmatism as a virtue in and of itself is no longer persuasive to people who realize that we actually need significant change if we want to improve the country in a meaningful way. So I love these panels. I hate CNN, but whenever Alison Camerota does these panels, I do think that they're fascinating because it's just a nice little, a snapshot of what voters are feeling, and I do think that that's important for CNN viewers who wouldn't otherwise have that perspective to get. So I just wanted to share this with you.
Girly Mike Fettuccine needs your support on Patreon. What a loser. Visit patreon.com/Humanist Report to support the low ratings Humanist Report. Sad. My views are much higher.